Medfield TV. Community shows.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Medfield Public Schools School Committee meeting. Today's Monday, December 4th. We were just in executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. If in an open meeting, it may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body. On the agenda tonight is the public input, approval of minutes from November 6th, 2017. For new business, we have the trip request to Philadelphia, the new grant procedure, the first draft, the student activity policy, the first draft, and other items since posting on November 30th, 2017. We also have the superintendent's report to the committee, which will include the fiscal year 19 budget update, the student services search update, the Dale Street School update, and district recognition. Future agenda items will include the fiscal year 19 budget, the high school handbook revisions, the student activity policy, and the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey presentation.
Madam Chair, if I could just speak to that for a second.
Sure.
Sue Kyle is going to be doing the presentation for that. She had a conflict this evening, so that's why she's not, I know we talked about it last meeting that she would be here, either this one or the next one. The next meeting, that date fit better in her schedule, so she'll be doing the presentation that evening.
Okay, is there anyone that has any public input? We'll start with that. Okay, so we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from November 6th.
Madam Chair, I reviewed the regular meeting and executive committee minutes from the November 6, 2017 meeting, and I recommend and move that they be accepted as submitted.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And for new business, we have the trip request to Philadelphia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doug Olson had a conflict this evening, so he couldn't be here. But in your packet, you have the request that he put in for a trip to New York City and Philadelphia for the Festival of Music. And that would be for the band, orchestra, and the chorus as well. So I think it's 120 students, approximately 7 to 8 chaperones. Mr. Parker gives us his blessing. I certainly do as well, and I would ask you to approve that this evening so they can have this great experience.
I just want to clarify a couple of things because there has been a couple of questions amongst the parents in terms of the expense, the length of the trip, missing school right after April break, and I think Doug is addressing those issues. So this, from what I understand, I mean, this is a daunting task to organize a trip for 120 students and whatnot. But I just wanted to clarify that there are those issues being worked out, but I think it'll all be set and A-okay.
Thank you.
With respect to the chaperones, they end up, they're teacher chaperones, right?
They have been in the past, yes.
So there were 2 or 3 that were unidentified at that point. Were they
TBA, I know.
pretty sure that they'll be teachers, or?
I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
They have in the past.
Historically
I'm not sure.
Or MMA
Or MMA folks.
people.
Okay.
Yeah. I can check with Doug if you like and let you know.
I'm
Sure you were
Right.
perfectly on top of it.
Okay.
Not worried.
I move to approve the band trip or the music trip in
Second.
April 2018.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
All
Approved.
right, thank you.
The next item is the grant procedure, the first draft.
Michael? Sure.
All right, so you just received the updated draft for the student activity. I'm just going to go through the background of it. Last year we had a student activity audit. Through that audit, there were findings. One of the findings was that the Medfield School Committee hadn't adopted the new regulation, which went into effect of 2016, which was to adopt a manual, policy manual. part of that policy manual, there was an update to the student activity accounts. The school committee hasn't adopted those new policies, which is a state regulation. So what I did was I attached your old policy, which is JJF, file JJF, and in your manual, towards the back, you will see that there's going to be a proposed changes to it, and I'll just go through the quick ones. So in the old student activity policy, you'll see that none of the policies were actually numbered, so we're going to number those, starting with student activity agency account, and then moving forward from that point on. The other major change.
Michael, I don't think we have the old one in this.
We do, it's beyond, it's after the minute.
It's after.
Oh, I'm looking at what came in.
If you look in your packet.
Okay, the one in the packet is the old one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but the new one doesn't have the, okay, gotcha.
Okay. So I can wait till everyone finds it.
No, I have it right here, thank you.
Okay. So the other major change is the student activity checking account maximum balance. Currently, the elementary is $5,000, and the middle school, high school is $15,000. So one of the recommendations was to increase those balances for the elementary to $6,000 and middle school, high school to $20,000. The increase at the middle school, high school is because of all the activities that are happening with graduation and the prom, that they need a greater balance in their checking account. And then there are a couple of additional requirements that is required by a state mandate, which is, you'll see it's number 6, which is student activity agency and checking account audits. We should be doing internal and external audits. The financial reporting for student activity accounts. We haven't yet adopted what we do with the dollars that a senior class ends up with in their checking accounts. You need to adopt that policy so that the senior class knows what they have to do with their final amount at the end.
Well, can you explain that a little bit, because you had talked to us about that a few years ago,
So
your experience in other districts.
So there's 3 different ways that you could do it, where at the end of the year, the senior class is going to end up with some type of funding after they paid off all their expenses. Those dollars do not belong to the Medfield Public Schools. So there's 3 options. The first option is that you assign the officers the rights to use those dollars towards reunion, so they can set up a bank account with the local bank, and those dollars have to be used towards their reunion. The second thing, that other communities have done, whatever's in the balance, can be donated to the school department for a specific cause. So it can be towards, the high school, towards next year's prom, whatever they feel comfortable doing. And then there's a third one where the dollars can go, let's say, towards a scholarship or whatever they want to. But the school committee has to set that policy. So there has to be a specific policy on how those dollars have to be spent after that graduating class leaves Medfield. The recommendation that is, if you look at, when you get a chance, in the manual, is that after a specific amount of time, usually 6 months after the graduation day, those dollars have to leave their student activity account and have to go somewhere. But you guys have to state that policy. So that's another major change that hasn't happened here in Medfield. This is not even the first reading, because what's going to happen is tomorrow we have a leadership meeting. We're going to be reviewing that with the principals. We're going to make some changes. The school committee should read the new policy before the first reading. Once that first reading has happened, it's going to go to our auditing firm. They're going to audit the new policies just to make sure that we're meeting all state and federal requirements. And then after that, there will be a second reading from the school committee before we adopt the student activity new policy manual. So any questions?
What's the time frame on that? So how long will it take to get to the auditors and kind of back to us? Are we looking
Yeah,
at
the
like
auditors
a
are
year, or
ready.
it's-
The auditors are ready. I think tomorrow we should be ready to go on our end by tomorrow if there's any changes.
Okay.
High school principal and middle school principal already received this, so they have it. So tomorrow's just a review.
Right.
So they get it after our meeting the auditors will get it after our meeting on December 18th, because that'd be the first reading.
Correct. So they'll get it. It takes them about a week to review.
We will do the second reading and
Correct.
January.
adoption in January.
Yep.
Now,
We're looking at
I'm going to also say one of the
adoption.
changes in our policy that we spoke about that a lot of communities do is that the town will be responsible for the audits moving forward. So as they're doing the town audit, we will implement the student activity audit, so it will be part of that process, which is not part of that process currently.
So probably adoption then at the second meeting in January, that's what we'll aim for. You know, barring any concerns you folks have.
Second meeting or the first meeting in January?
Second,
Okay.
right, when,
If we do first reading
If we do
next
first
meeting at the 18th.
The second
Oh,
meeting,
right.
the second meeting is a public
Right.
hearing,
First meeting.
right,
so we can.
Yeah, we want to do it before that.
Correct.
before the public,
We can do it
Yep,
first.
you're right.
Mhm. Okay. All right.
What happens, Michael, if an account hits the maximum? I mean, I know they're supposed to, it shouldn't because you're supposed to be spending money out, but I would think at the beginning of a term, you're probably going to get that maximum.
So it's, the town treasurer has jurisdiction over this account. So what happens is they have the savings account, so they won't release the money if it's over a certain amount of money. So they have to request cash be transferred from a cash account, which you're going to read in there, to a checking account in order to pay for those bills. If it goes over that amount, she or he, whoever the treasurer is at this time, it's a she, doesn't have to release those dollars to the account.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Mike.
Do you want me to just go through the next one?
Yeah,
Next one.
yeah,
Okay.
let's do the next one. Grant, policy.
Okay. So the next one is a federal requirement in the town audit of the 2016, which was last year because they audited in 2017 this year. The auditors have asked the town to put together a manual grant procedure. Currently, the town does not have a manual for grant procedures. This is a new regulation. It's a federal regulation. And I have worked with the town accountant, Joy, and an outside consultant to put together this manual grant procedure. I have reviewed it. Joy, the town accountant, has reviewed it. We sat down with the consultants. We made some changes to it. There were some changes in there that we needed to make because when you go and work with a consultant, they're going to throw everything into a manual. For certain things, you know, that belong in the manual according to the Medfield bylaws. So at this point, it's going to go to the school committee and the selectmen for their first reading. Changes in here that are important are the procurement process that is in here, and then just different regulations that we have to adopt when we're dealing with federal grants, which you're going to see in this manual. We are, right now, I can tell you right now that the auditors are reviewing this manual because the auditors were in town last week, and one of the things they requested was to have this manual as a draft form so they can review it. So if you have any specific questions on it, I can answer those specific questions.
I just wondered, Michael, as I read it, the titles are all federal programs, but my understanding is they cite Massachusetts laws as well. So, the language all refers to federal funds. Will we change that to just reflect funds, or is that mandatory language? I mean, I know a lot of this is sort of
again,
imposed on us.
a great question. As the auditors review it, they're going to give us some feedback on it. The question was like the MSBA, that's a grant, correct? And
We hope so.
It's correct. And that's a state grant, not a federal grant. And the question I had was, do we have to follow the same procedures once this manual is in place? And the response back from the auditors, yes, because it's considered a grant. So those are things that are gonna be vetted out as we go
There's no federal
through.
funds tied up in an MSBA grant, so.
Correct, it's all local funds.
So we'd have to also look at how nonprofit grants we receive, how that is impacted as well.
Yes.
You know, I would think MMA, MCP, PTO.
PTO,
All those
correct.
grants that we get through central office, we'd have
Mhm.
to see how that impacts it too.
I'm sure you're gonna have more questions as you
Yeah.
read through it, and as I get the findings or the report back from the auditors, I'll pass that along to you guys, so you guys can also see what their recommendations are.
I'm the only one who'll find it exciting, so.
You never know.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
And I don't believe we have any other items since posting on November 3rd.
No, Madam Chair.
And no
No
donations?
donations this month, at this meeting.
So the superintendent's report to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. So I just want to give you a quick update on the FY19 budget and where we are at this point. So over the last couple of weeks, Michael and I have met with all the departments on Friday, 11/17, and then again on Monday, the 20th. We met with Wellness K-12, Music K-12, Mathematics 6-12, Social Studies 6-12, Technology K-12, Facilities K-12. Then on the 30th, we met with librarians, K-12, Special Education K-12, Art K-12, World Language K-12, Science K-12, Medfield High School, Blake Middle School, English Department 6-12, Nurses K-12. And then on the 1st, we met with Reading K-8, Dale Street, Wheelock, and Memorial, and we still have one more meeting left with curriculum to finish that up. So we spent a lot of time, it's a collaborative process, we developed this budget, sitting down and trying to get what the needs are in each department. So the departments talk to the teachers about it, they give feedback to the department heads, and then we meet and have those conversations. So really good conversations. I think that there's a lot of requests that we expect with staffing. I think that we've made some adjustments, and we're still looking to do that initial budget, which will be at our next meeting after we finish with curriculum. But I think there's nothing outrageous in terms of their requests. I think they're all things that folks need to do a good job with our kids every day. And I don't even think there's any outrageous requests in terms of staffing either. There are things that staffing positions that we certainly need. I mean, I think to the special education folks that are working in the classroom with kids, got requests throughout the district for those folks. And then looking at expanding some of our STEAM programs that we have. And again, all this ties back to our strategic plan, all the things that we're trying to focus on. And people looked at the strategic plan and how it fit into their department before they had the meeting with us. So we're optimistic about it, but again, I think that initial budget that you see on the 18th or whenever we meet again will be a large number. It typically is, and we kind of work down a little bit. But we try to get as many of those requests in that initial budget, and then we work from there. So there'll be staffing increases, supply increases, technology increases throughout the budget. And then after that initial budget, then we sit down and work with warrant committee to try to get to a manageable number. But that's where we are now, just really trying to synthesize all that information we got in those 19 or 20 meetings we've had with departments and go forward from there. Do you have any questions or?
I suppose just my one thought
Mhm.
is, with the social emotional learning task force, I know we're in very early stages. Our second meeting is only tomorrow, and this is going to be a long process. But my question is, I suppose once we go through this at least this second semester of meetings, if something comes up, are we really looking to implement then not next year, but the following year?
So you mean recommendations from SEL?
Yes, yeah.
That's a good question. I think that, we'll be able to get a sense of what folks are looking for out of SEL before town meeting. So we can make some adjustments on the fly if we need to, which we always do. It's just like if we have a student move in that needs services, we make adjustments and hire someone if we have to and do that kind of thing. So it's very similar. If it looks like SEL is gonna recommend something in terms of staffing before April town meeting, then we'll try to get that into the budget. But I mean, that's the hard part of,
Yeah,
of
it's-
starting this process so early and having an early town meeting, right? That's, so in one sense, it's great because you know where you're gonna be by May 1st for the following year, but it's also tough to predict where you are in October, November, in December, where you're gonna be next year in September. So the things come up. So I think it's good in some regards, but it's also a challenge, so we need to be flexible in that regard.
And that's why it's so important to me that it's your committee, and because you're the person who's gotta, I mean, we have to sell the budget, but you're the person who has to sell it to us.
Yeah.
So when it comes to spending
No question.
recommendations, you know, I really look to you for that guidance, and I know you'll take some input from them, but.
Absolutely.
I've had a number of people ask me within the community how they can advocate for the school budget as we're looking forward to that time. Do you have thoughts right now about how that might go, or when we'll be able to kind of give people, I mean, I think people are really looking for a structured way
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
advocate for the schools and for their kids.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we try to do is communicate as much as we can what is in our budget. We send the PowerPoints out, we're probably gonna send the entire line item by line item if someone wants to get into that, the weeds there. Send that out to take a look at, and then just really be supportive at our meetings. I think whether it's this meeting or meetings with the warrant committee, I think those are the real important meetings. The public hearing is real important, so people can advocate there as well. And then, of course, in April, the town meeting, and that's important too. But I
And
think it's
then
just,
any
it's more
votes
of just
after
kind of
that.
paying attention to how we're doing and go to the meetings and that kind of thing. That's the real important.
So you
piece.
do recommend that people can attend warrant
Oh,
meetings and be
absolutely.
very kind of clued
Sure.
into that, and that put that in their calendar and really
Mhm.
think about that that's something that's important.
Sure,
Yeah, although the
absolutely.
warrant committees, their agenda sometimes, it's not always clear when we're gonna come up. We can, we
Right.
Right.
know, and we can
Right.
put that
Yeah.
information out, but it moves around depending on how their budgets are advancing.
Right.
To me, the most important thing is to come to, our public hearing sometimes has had one or two people in it, and that's, in a way that's firming for us, okay, people trust what we're doing, but it doesn't give us the message, okay, these are, these 10 people have come out in support of this particular, smaller class sizes at the middle school, or, new science program and, whatever it may be. Those are the kind of things we need to hear at the public hearing, so we know, from the community, we all, we're elected to make our own decisions about line drawing.
Right.
That's what a budget is, it's, in judgment, but it's helpful for us to hear what the town's priorities are at that meeting.
I'd
at that
really
hearing.
like to see us reaching out to the PTOs and to the MCP and, individual classes and, individual class grades to say that these are the times that we really need support, and that and not only just support, but input. So if there's a way that we can be kind of, in a concerted way, reaching out, I think that people would really appreciate that, we all have kids, we all need babysitters.
Right.
But I also think that it's tremendously important to people.
We do go over, I think the next two superintendent advisories will focus on budget too, and I usually get some folks there and some really good input.
Right.
Typically in the beginning of the year, ask them to give me some input of what they think is important in the budget, and they give us some good ideas there. I think that's, another avenue to do that too, and that's either during the day or at night, depending on which meeting it is, to get people to go to, so.
Yeah. We should probably advertise the cookies for the superintendent.
Right.
too, 'cause
I know.
think we'll be able
Cookies
to
are a
get
big
more
draw.
people.
Yeah.
Geez, I'd skip work if I knew there were cookies.
They're good too.
There it is.
Nighttime.
They're good.
The mornings you get blueberry scones.
That's right, blueberry scones in the morning. That's all I have, Madam Chair, for the budget. The Director of Student Services search update. So at the last meeting, you asked me to look at the two proposals that we got and make a decision based on what their proposals were. We're going to go with Future Management System, who the district has worked with before. They are going to be doing some of the recruiting calls, which we had talked about as an important piece of it. So that's the only part. They will do the recruiting calls and do that. As far as everything else, we're doing the ads. I've notified all the folks that were on the committee last year. They all want to participate again this year, which is great news. We had an excellent committee last year. So all of them will come back, and posting will be by the end of this week, and then we'll have, Future start and make some calls for us. So we'll have the school spring ad, which everyone in education looks for. Everyone does. So if someone's looking there, they can do that, and then Futures will target some sitting folks that are in the position right now that are doing it well, and that can help us out with that. Again, we talked about how I can't do those kinds of things, but an outside firm can do that, and we're hoping they can get a larger pool for us. It's been a difficult position to search for. I know a local district close to us has busted the search twice now, 2 times in a row, so we're hoping that Futures can help us out with that and get some good folks in. I know Westwood used Futures, I think 3 or 4 years ago to do the exact same thing, and they were successful with that. So I got a really good recommendation from their former superintendent on how that process went. So that's where we are with that. I think we're just about on schedule, maybe a couple of days behind the posting piece, but we wanted to bring on Futures, so that took a little.
Do you need a formal motion for that? I mean, it's not much money, I don't think you do, but.
If you'd like to, sure. I don't think we do, but.
I move that we engage Future Management Services to assist with the Director of Student Service search update.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
I just want to stress, as I had before, I think we should try everything we can, but we shouldn't be fooled into thinking that just because we hire an outside agency to help us, we're going to necessarily have a successful search. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. And what they're doing is reaching out to people who are sitting somewhere, doing well, and are happy. And it's sort of like the old, was it Charlie Chan who said I wouldn't belong to a club, don't have me as a member?
Mhm.
Right? It's a similar kind of thing. If you're going to get somebody from one of these jobs, if they're happy, you have to convince them to move. And
Right.
that's really difficult to do.
Good.
As
Hopefully
we
this
found out
gives
last
us a
year.
little bit more of a leg up. But
But thank you. Thank you for that. The Dale Street SOI update. So I received a call last week from MSBA, and I have really good news on this front. So they are adding us to the agenda for the December 13th meeting, and they will vote to move Dale Street ahead into the program. So it's really exciting news, which means that if voted at that meeting, and then we'll go right to the article where we've drafted an article already for town meeting in April, which we'd look for an allocation of the feasibility study. And then that would take, 8 to 9 to 10 months of a feasibility study. In speaking with MSBA, one of the things that we talked about was grade configuration. So they're probably gonna look at a scope of probably 3 different pieces on the feasibility study. One being a renovation of existing building, which they do for every single project. I mean, they have to do that, which we don't think will be a viable solution. I don't think they do either. Looking at doing a 4-5 building, and then looking at a 3-4-5 building. So those would be the areas they're gonna investigate and look at if everything goes well at the meeting at MSBA next week. So we're really excited about that. Been a long time coming, and certainly have a lot of people to thank, a lot of hard work that went into the SOI, and certainly the meetings with Representative Garlick and Representative Dooley and Senator Timilty before he left. So real excited about that, and looking forward to an exciting process. I know, Chris, you've been through a building project before, so you know what it's like.
I did one of their very first buildings.
Right.
We don't know what we're in for. I think, first of all, this is bearing the lead. This is probably the best news the district has had in years. And I think since I've been on the committee, we've been submitting
Yes.
statements of interest, and that's a long time for this building.
Mhm.
And even to get into the grant process is a long wait, and
Right.
to be there finally, assuming we get the vote later this month, is really critical for the town, because it means that if we work with MSBA, they'll pay a substantial portion of the building costs. That comes with a lot of strings.
Sure.
And so, we have to we have a committee need to be aware of those, and the selectmen should too, because technically building a building is under the selectmen's jurisdiction. They get to make the decision whether it's build or renovate. They get to make a lot of those decisions that we as a community, would value and want to weigh in on, and we can weigh in on them. But ultimately, if they think it's a lot more efficient to renovate at Dale Street, they'll hold the power of the purse, and they say, if you want your roughly 40%
39.84%
investment reimbursement, which is a lot of money when you're talking about
Sure
a
is.
$40-50 million building, maybe.
Mhm.
You have to play ball. And, when I was in Norwood, we had spent a lot of time and money invested with a particular architect who was helping us with concepts, and we invested 7 figures as a town with this architect and had, you know, a design for the school that we were comfortable with. You know, it was Norwood had never had an override in its history, and I don't think has had one since. So it was a pretty significant undertaking. And MSBA had this idea at the time that they were going to sort of take these off the shelf
Right.
projects. They,
Mhm.
you know, they had a couple of high schools that they built that worked well. Let's just take those and kind of make them fit on your site. I was very skeptical. Jack McCarthy at MSBA and I are good friends, we're old friends, and we went round and round about it, because I felt like it was kind of a square peg, round hole. He was right, we saved a ton of money, the building turned out great.
Beautiful.
But, you know, they're the professionals, and we as a town will have a lot of input, but there's gonna be a lot of work. It's gonna be a lot of work for this committee, it's gonna be a lot of work for the permanent building committee. There'll be a subcommittee established, townwide subcommittee established to work on this. And it should be, because when a town's spending $40, $50 million in this, you know, and then the state's reimbursing us for 40% of that, that's a pretty significant undertaking. And I think we all should buckle up for the next 18 months. We have to have an appropriation by April, right?
Well, 270 days. Once
From the
they-
day of the vote.
Yeah, so once they start the clock, so.
So that's
December
right.
13th?
December 13th.
Yeah, it'll bump us right into like if town meeting gets snowed out, we'll have to apply for an extension. Hopefully that doesn't happen in April, but we'll do that, we will have to approve, and again, that's a lot of time. There's a lot that goes in between December and
Mhm.
April in terms of trying to figure out what the best approaches are.
Right.
You know, I think the reconfiguration of grades, you know, we were thoughtful about how we configured our grades, but that could help us with a lot of the overcrowding problems we're
Right.
facing
Right.
at the lower levels, because one of the biggest problems we have is space. We could add more teachers, we've got no place to put them.
Right.
And MSBA, like this board, is pretty adamantly opposed to, you know, those temporary structures, because they quickly become permanent, and they're not made to
Mhm.
be that. So,
Right.
I think it's great news. I think, you know, thank God we have Tim on the committee, because, you know, this is what he does for a
What he
living.
does.
And Mike Quinlan,
Right.
the town is gonna lean on them hard. I feel bad for them that they can't participate in bidding for the job, but that's a burden they have of being part of, so engaged in the town. And I know they probably would wanna work on a project in their own hometown anyway, so.
So
So
from beginning to end, so in the ideal world, how long will this take?
So I think best case scenario from December, 3.5 years with everything. You know, 3 years, maybe a little bit longer. It all depends. I mean, elementary schools are a little bit quicker than high schools. High
Right.
schools
Yeah,
take.
I would think it could be a little less. but
Yeah.
Tim would know that better than either of us, I
Yeah.
guess, right? Did you have buildings in your last district?
I did a high school 2 districts ago, yeah. I was in central office, so it was a little bit different, but in the old MSBA, so it was not the new.
Oh, yeah, well, they just let you do whatever.
They-
They
you do
paid
whatever
you
you wanted
eventually.
then, yeah.
Glad they paid Tuesday
Yeah.
for a hamburger today.
Exactly.
So I have a question as far as the feasibility study
Mhm.
that they do. Do we have any kind of control with that as far as, you know, what's our input, what's,
Oh,
do
sure,
we
we'll have
hire
input,
people,
yeah,
like,
we'll have
how
input.
much?
So we have to hire a firm to do that.
Okay, and
That's
it's
all-
our choosing,
So
or do
we-
they give you a list of
So we
firms?
hire an OPM. Michael, did they let us choose that?
The OPM?
No, not the OPM, the feasibility study, that just goes out to bid, right?
Feasibility study, yes, so part of the feasibility is that you have to have an OPM and an architect on board. So there's phases of it.
Right.
You first have to hire an OPM.
And do they give you a list to choose from, or we can choose?
You have to go through the.
You have to go
To
through
go through
the-
them.
process.
Okay.
So it's like what we did with the boiler, we didn't get to
Yeah.
choose the OPM for the
Right.
boiler. You know, they chose Skanska, and
Right.
worked out fine, but.
But, you know, that
Yeah.
OPM, for those at home, is the owner's project manager. That's what
Yeah.
Tim does. And they, you know, they have I think, a good core group that they're
Mhm.
comfortable with.
Right.
And there will be a lot of input. There'll be a lot of public meetings. There'll be townwide meetings. There'll be meetings of this committee. There'll be meetings of the selectmen. Both this committee, the selectmen, permanent building construction committee.
There'll be no
probably the
shortage of
warrant
meetings.
committee.
Right.
What's that?
There'll be no shortage of meetings.
Yeah,
that's for
well,
sure.
we'll
That's
all
good.
create a
Yeah.
subcommittee, I think, a townwide subcommittee that will liaise between them, because otherwise it costs so much money to get all these professionals to attend so many
Right.
meetings, you couldn't really do that. But there'll be plenty of time in the feasibility study for us to weigh in.
Mhm.
Okay. Great news.
So we'll wait to hear,
That's
next
fantastic.
week from
Yeah.
the meeting and.
And we don't need to, nobody needs to attend that meeting, they don't want us there.
Mary Ann.
Yeah.
Oh, Shell, good.
And Michael, me, probably Tim will be there anyway, and then we'll ask someone from the town side as well
Good.
to be there. And then our representatives will all be there as well.
For the one on the 13th or the one after that?
For the one on the 30th, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Anything else on that? Okay, great, thank you. Just in terms of recognition, Madam Chair, just want to remind folks that tomorrow night is the QPR training at the UCC, and that's a suicide prevention training open to everyone in the public, 7 to 9. And then next week on our professional development day, our teachers 6 through 12 will be getting that training as well through Riverside, so we're excited about that. And then just also a reminder that our SEL task force, which Anna May had said, is meeting tomorrow for our second meeting. So we're looking forward to that. Great conversation at our last meeting, and I'm sure that will continue this time as well. That's all I have.
Any district recognition?
That was just, yeah, just a,
Okay.
yeah.
James, do you have anything?
Yeah, so the student council put on another successful pep rally this year, the day before Thanksgiving break. A big thanks to everyone who helped out with that.
It was excellent.
Dr. Marzi.
It was excellent.
Through our can drive, the student council collected over 3,000 cans from the school, which we delivered and sorted at the food cupboard. Aside from student council, the junior and senior class student governments hosted their holiday dance this past Friday, which turned out to be a huge success. Looking ahead, this month the student council has their candy cane sales, so we'll be selling candy canes at lunches. The kids can send them with notes to their friends before the holiday break. And in January, the council's looking to partner, or we will be partnering with the Best Buddies Club in the high school to take participants to the Special Olympics bocce tournament at Rockland High.
Oh, nice. Thanks, James.
Shortly after our last meeting, we had a contractor who had some activity come to light in the Globe. And once that came to light, he resigned. And I just, first of all, wanted to commend you, Dr. Marsden, for how you handled that. I felt like it was important to get the information out to students who might have been involved. Even though this gentleman was not accused of any impropriety with children, you got it to those students. I heard from a lot of those parents, actually, some of them are in my neighborhood. They appreciated the way that was dealt with in a way that was respectful of their rights, respectful of their students' rights, respectful of their privacy, and didn't try to make too big a deal of something that was not really our problem as a district. We had a guy who resigned because some of his inappropriate behavior with adults came to light. After you handled it, I think someone in the community took it upon themselves to send an email that I got, I don't know who else got. I didn't appreciate it. Didn't appreciate the criticism of how we handle personnel matters that doesn't take into account things that we have to consider that members of the general public don't have to consider. Personnel issues, privacy issues, student privacy issues. I felt like it was an email that took a bad situation and tried to make it worse. And worse than that, it suggested that I should share this information with my kids. Now, I have a kid at the high school. She has no idea. She couldn't pick this gentleman out of a lineup of one. And the suggestion that I should have to share this information to prevent rumors is exactly the opposite of what we want as a district. We put information out to people who need it so we don't engage in rumor mongering. And I felt like pushing it out to an indiscriminate, I don't know who the group was that got it, was the exact opposite of what we should be doing as a district. And I'm glad it didn't come from us.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I fully agree with you, actually. I was shocked by that email. On a more positive note, I want to say that I had a fourth grade conference a few weeks ago, the elementary school conferences did, and my son's teacher did student-led conferences. And I have to tell you that I think both my son and I got far more out of that conference through his own evaluation around his own work, his own evaluation around his positives, where he needed help, where he felt he was doing well. And I feel like he was like, oh, Mom, that was a lot of work. But honestly, I think he is able to take on more information and understand his evaluation of himself and his work. And I really feel like it was an incredibly valuable model, and I hope that more people might choose to do that in the future.
That's great feedback.
It's
Thank you.
Leanne DePisa. She's
Oh, yeah.
really
Dale
been a
Street's,
fantastic teacher
Dale
for
Street's
him.
excited about doing that. Some of the teachers have decided that's one of the goals they're doing this year, so that's great to hear. I'll make sure I pass that along to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wept in mine, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And, no, because my son has Mr. Pisa. And so when my current 10th grader had Carrie Cowell in the 5th grade, she started the student-led conferences. And it's magic, really, because you're getting a kid to think, all right, what am I really good at? You know, and then what do I need to put a little bit more effort into? So it wasn't just the good, the bad. It was all about the presentation of, I'm not quite there yet, but I can get there with a little work.
Right.
And, you know, she had the Chromebooks, and they navigated it, they looked it up, and, you know, he compiled, added the links, and I thought, you could do this? You
Right.
know, but it was really empowering for a child to take ownership of his own work versus parents and the teachers, you know, speaking behind closed doors about their kid, you know. So I was just so grateful for that experience. And Sebastian, you know, they got to own their work, and to know, and he also said, well, so and so was really harsh on himself because they had to rate themselves, and even Mr. Peace said, you know, they're learning and they're still kind of young to do that, but one kid was just like, oh, you know, I'm terrible at everything, and she's like, no, you're not, and would change the direction. Well, this is what you're good at, so. I'm very grateful for
Okay.
that. It was a
Great feedback.
beautiful
It
experience.
really was.
Thank you.
So the only thing, thanks, Chris, for that. I think that people don't always realize that there's a certain standard that we have to hold ourselves to as a committee, as elected officials. And so I think sometimes it's really difficult for us to hear kind of public scuttlebutt, public rumor, and there's a certain set of protocols and ethical behaviors that we have to hold ourselves to that maybe people in the public don't always understand. So I really appreciate that.
Sometimes we call it the high road.
Yes, or just ethical standards of dealing with certain situations because you're either an elected official or you have a leadership role in the community. So you have a certain behavior standard that you have to adhere to for a lot of reasons. The one event that I want to talk about was the Angel Run yesterday, the Medfield Foundation. Such an amazing day, such an awesome weekend in Medfield between the tree lighting, the parade.
A lot of good stuff.
It really, when you see all these things, and you see the people and everybody that puts into that Angel Run, between the kids decorating the posters, the student council, the amount of work that goes into that run, you know, for a little 3-mile run, although I was definitely
Didn't seem
racing.
little.
I was racing a few 8-year-olds myself, but
all
but
uphill.
yeah.
That Hillcrest neighborhood is
There
very
were a
rough.
lot of hills, it felt like this year. But I do think that that's one of the great things about Medfield, when you see all the different hands that touch that, you know, from high school kids getting up early in the morning on a Sunday to go out there that I know firsthand is not easy to do. So I just want to let people know in the foundation that doesn't go unnoticed, or that really is an amazing event that we've continued, and it really shows the spirit of Medfield, which I think is such a great thing, and such a positive, such a good day to see people all ages.
And good weather again this year, so
Yeah,
that was good.
it was great. So on that note, future agenda items will include the fiscal year 19 budget, the high school handbook revisions, the student activity policy, and the Metro West Health Survey presentation. And our
And
next meeting is Monday, December 18th.
And just a reminder that FY19 would be the initial budget presentation, so that's
Yep.
the first round that I present to you folks.
Will you let the warrant committee know that we'll have that?
Yes.
That's usually one.
I talked to Tom actually this week, and he said that, last week, and he said he's going to have some folks there.
Okay, do we know who their subcommittee is?
I don't know. Mr. Mulvey's here tonight. I don't know if he's the only one on it or how they're going to do it. But
Thank you for coming. I move adjournment.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
You're watching Medfield TV, community shows.